संभाले गुरबाणी च लिखे जो उठते हैं कम्मां कारां धंधे धंधारा च पै जाने उगवे दिवस आल जाल संभाले बिख माया के बिस्तारे ये जिहड़े आपां खिलारे पाए हुए किते आई रैन भया सुपनंतर सुपने भी दुख सारे। फिर सतगुरु सानू सुख लैण दा वो जुगत सिखाउंदे आ। वो मनमुख की कहानी है तो जिहड़ी तुसीं बैठे हुए गुरमुख है भावें साडा पहला मन जिहड़ा मनमुखी हुंदा पर जो सतगुरु की शरण च आ जाते वो फिर गुरमुख बना देंगे उसे मन ही मनमुख माया ना जुड़िया तो गुरुमुख गुरु ना जुड़ गया। इत्थे गुरु किहनूं कहा आद अंत एके अवतारा सोई गुरु। देखो गुरमुख ते मनमुख इन्नी फर्क है। मनमुख माया नाल जुड़िया होया विचारां नाल जुड़िया होया ते गुरमुख गुरु दे राही अकाल पुरख दे मुख दी आवाज़ जिन्हों नाद गया वो समाउणा सिख जांदा। गुरमुख नादन गुरमुख वेदन गुरमुख रिया। देखो ये कितनी प्यारी जुगत भाई साहब समझा गए साडे बहुत ही सन्मानयोग टीचर भाई साहब भाई सेवा सिंह जी तरमाला ते हुण उन्हां वल्लों ही वरसाए गुरमुख भाई दलवीर सिंह जी तरमाला वो समझा रहे सानू ये ज्ञान ते सारा ज्ञान है गुरु ग्रंथ साहब जी पर जिन्ना चिर कोई गुरमुख नहीं ना समझाउंदा ते गुरमुख भी वो फिर वाहिगुरू नवाज के भेजदा जिन्हां नूं ओही दसणगे ते जिसे नवाजे गुरमुख साजे नाम वसे तिस अनहद वाजे। अनहद नाम नूं ही कहा जो तुहाडे अंदर वो सहज तुहानूं तूर वजना शुरू हो जाता नाम पांच शब्द जिन्होंने कहा गुरबाणी कि तिसी ही सुख तिसी ही ठकुराई तिसे ना आवे जम नेड़ा जिन्हों के अंदर नाम प्रगट हो जाता उन्होंने गुरमुख कहते थे। वो गुरु के मुख की आवाज़ आ आद अंत एके अवतारा सोई गुरु। अकाल पुरख के मुख की आवाज़ जो तुहानूं सुन लग पैंदी है उदों साडा मन गुरमुख बनता। फिर तुसीं उस समाउणा सीखना उहदे चों फिर अमृत रस आउणा ते जिन्ना चिर वो रस नहीं लेंदे ते जिन हर 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 रस नाम ना पाया ते भागहीन उन्हां चिर असीं भागां तो हीणे जमा नहीं ते जल ते उपज तरंग ज्यों जल ही विखे। उन्होंने कहते हर जन हर हर नाम समाणे दुख जन मरण पवखंडा है अविनाशी पुरख पाया परमेश्वर बसो बखंड वर। ये कहानी थोड़ा चिर आपां नूं भैन जी बेटी सुणाउणगे। साडी बेटी न्यू जर्सी तो आए ने जो बड़ा लंबा समा गुरमुखां दी संगत उम्र छोटी है जी तुसीं वेखोगे कल भी उन्होंने समझाया सी आपां नूं इंग्लिश दे विच। इंग्लिश दे विच तां आपां नाल लाउने आ कि कई बच्चे जिहड़े दे बौर ने वो पंजाबी नहीं समझदे भाषा तुहाडे च भी कई जंग बैठे ने वो इंग्लिश नूं जल्दी समझ जांदे इसलिए उन्होंने बेनती है कि 10-15 मिनट 15 मिनट वो आप जियां नूं ये जो गुरबाणी अकथ कथा सतगुरु बख्शिश कर रहे हैं ये सारिया भाषा दे विच आपां सीखना क्योंकि सारे ही वर्ल्ड की मनुखता जिहड़ी है उन्होंने इक्को ही गुरु है धन साहिब श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी ते सारी मनुखता नूं गुरु गोबिंद सिंह जी सिख कहते हैं। सिख हुंदा सीखण वाले सिखियार्थी जिन्हों आपां पढ़ते हैं ना सब सिखण को हुक्म है गुरु मान्यो ग्रंथ। और गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब दे विच जिहड़ा इन्ना सौखा तरीका दसदा मिलाप दा वो होर किते नहीं दस्सिया किसे धर्म च नहीं दस्सिया गया। सो आपां इन्हां कोलों पंजाबी च भी ते इंग्लिश भी दोवें ही तरीके सीखने ने कि किस तरह जिहड़ा साडा मन है ये उधरों जो इहदा जन्म हुंदा ते उधरों लिव तोड़ दित्ती जांदी है ते माया नाल जोड़ दित्ता जांदा। लिव छुड़की लगी तृष्णा माया अमर वरत। तो हुण गुरु दे राहीं असीं किस तरह फिर इहनूं माया नालों तोड़ के ते वैगुरू नाल जोड़ना यही खेल है। खेल की है बुलिया रब दा की पाउणा उधरों पुट्टना ते इधर लाउणा। वेखो कितना सौखा जिहा हैगा आपां बोलदे हुंदे कि वाहिगुरू ने माया च इहनूं आप फसाया वा। माया खेल ही बनाया आमण जाण एक खेल बनाया आग्याकारी अपने हुक्म नालों नाम नालों तोड़ के माया दे नाल माया अमर अमर हुंदा हुक्म माया अमर वरताया ते ऐसा माया ना लगा भी किसी ने समझाया ही नहीं। किन्ने युग लंघ गए पहले युगों च भी मानस जन्म मिलता रहा पर गुरु नहीं मिले कोई गुरमुख नहीं मिले आपां नूं समझाउण वाला ते फिर आपां फिर दूजियां जूनां चले जाते रहे। तो हुण सतगुर कहंदे फिरत बहुते युग हारिओ मानस दे लही फिर दौड़ी मिलिया समा। ये नानक कहत मिलन की परिया सिमरत कहा नहीं। तो फिर सतगुर दसदे कि हुण वेखो किड्डे भाग अपने इस कलयुग के समय दे विच एक मानसिर मिल गया वड्डे भाग। फिर सतगुरु गुरु ग्रंथ साहब जी अगवाई कर रहे साडी, जिहड़ा कोई कसर छड्डदे ही नहीं समझाउण। और फिर गुरमुखां दा संग हो गया। उन्होंने फिर क्लीयर सौखा करके समझाता, नहीं सानू समझ नहीं सी लगनी, ये गुरमुखां ने समझाया तो फिर समझ गए। मैं दुनियावी तौर पर तुसीं बच्चों को पढ़ाउंदे हो तो जे उन्होंने साइंस पढ़ाउणी तो साइंस टीचर कोल जाना पवेगा, होर नहीं कोई उन्हें पढ़ा सकेगा। इसलिए ये सारा ही ज्ञान जिन्हें गुरमुखां ने समझिया, जो समझाउंदे ने फिर बड़ी छेती समझ लगती। आओ जी वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू
वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू वाहिगुरू। वाहिगुरू जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरू जी की फतेह। Guru प्यारो, we were just listening. Paramatma Nehru, he has been given many names. Everyone remembers him depending on which religion they're born in by different names. Maharaj explained Ram Ram, koi Khuda hai, koi Seve Gusaiya, koi Allah hai. And some are calling him Allah, some are calling him Ram, some are saying Gusai, and we are all sitting here together and chanting Guru Mantra, which is Wah Guru. And Maharaj explains to us that Paramatma Nirankar, God has created a game. The one that Vaisakhi was just explaining to us, Mere Prabh Sache ek khel rachaya. Just like we see when we are about to play a game, whether it's basketball or baseball, or whatever it is that we're interested in, whatever sport, we all go to a common ground and we have opponents who we worst and we play a game. In the same way, Maharaj explains to us that we are all here in this world to play a game, and the ground in which we come to play is this body. This body that we see, which we know as the human body, has been given many names in Gurbani. It's called Manukhade, it's called Pind, it's also called the shed, it's also called the house, it's also called Harmandir. Jumara Das ne Harmandir eho sharir hai, Gyan Ratan Pargat hoye. So our mind comes inside of this body every day to play a game. जिन्हों आप सारे हमारे दिमाग दे विच पढ़ते हैं, देवसरा दोय दाई दाया खेले सगल जगत. During the daytime we all enter this body, and at night we leave this body. And whatever deeds our mind commits when we are inside of this body determines whether we are getting closer to God or farther away from Him. So now, when we come inside of this body in the morning, our eyes open, we live our life here where we have our friends, we have our parents, we have our relationships, we have our work, we have our school. But when we leave this body at night, we forget everything. Everything related to the world, when we leave this body, we forget it. And we do that every single night. Har raat aapa sare shareer nu jadon chhad ke jaane hain, all our relationships, anything that connects us to this world goes away. Jai kai wari aapa vekhya hai, many times, if we have an exam or if we have any kind of worry or tension inside of us, when we go to sleep at night, that worry, that tension goes away. Why? Because the mind has left the body. Our connection to the world has ended. Now in the same way, Maharaj explains to us that the same way that our connection goes away when we all leave this body, one day there's going to come a time when our swasa rupi tan, this air that we're breathing in, that has been given to us by Paramatma and Nirankar, one day this air, these breaths that we're taking, this is the time that's going to get into our mind. However long we are breathing for, that's how long we can all stay inside this body. And what our swasa rupi tan, this money of breaths that has been given to us by Paramatma, when these end, we all have to evacuate this body, right? That is why this is sort of, you have to think about it as if it's a rental house. Whenever we live on rent, as long as we're giving money, we can live inside of that house. But when we stop giving the money, we stop giving rent, we have to leave the house. In the same way, in order for our mind to stay inside of this body, we're giving a rent. And what rent is that? This money of breaths, the air that we're breathing in. Once our money of Swasarupitan has ended, our mind has to leave this body. So now, the game that we are all here to play is our mind is committing some actions. Now, what happens is when our body commits some action, because body is something that we can see. So whenever we do something wrong, it's very easy to tell that, yeah, this person has committed this wrong action. But Maharaj explains to us that it's our mind's action that are either taking us away from God or making us more closer to Him. So now mind is invisible. We can't see the mind. And one thing that we need to keep reminding ourselves here is mind is the real us. Oftentimes when we think about who are we start thinking about our body. But Maharaj explains to us that it's not the body, it's the mind. The man, just like Paramatma Nirankar, who's our true Father, He has no shape, no color, no form. Maharaj explains to us, Roop na Rekh na Rankish Tragunte Prabh Pen. In the same way, our mind also is Jyot, just like Paramatma Nirankar is a form of light. He's Prakash Roop. In the same way, our man is also a form of light. He's also Prakash. He's also a Jyot. That is why Gurbani Guru says, Man tu Jyot Swaroop hai apna mool pehchan. So now, that man, which is known as the mind is us, is the real us. And as long as our mind is inside of this body, we can use this body, but when our mind leaves the body, then we all see that at night, when our mind leaves the body can't function on its own. That is why we have been told that think of it like our body being a vehicle and the mind being a driver. When the driver enters the vehicle can function, you can go places. In the same way, when our mind enters this body, this vehicle functions. We can use the eyes, we can use the ears, we can use our mouth. But when the driver leaves, the mind leaves, this body is not functionable, right? And that's why we say this person has died, and that they no longer are able to move their body. So now, that is why Maharaj explains to us in Gurbani Guru that is man ko koi khojo pai tan shute man kahan samay, that where does the mind go when it leaves the body? That's a question that Gurbani Guru is asking us to ask ourselves. That in the same way Guru Sahib explains to us, Suno re tu kaun? Guru Sahib is questioning us that who are you, kahan te aaya, where did you come from? Where will you go when this money of breaths has ended? Now, for example, we were previously talking about the rental example, that as long as we are giving money, we're able to live in a house for rent for a certain amount of time. But then, let's say one day the landlord says that they want to sell the house and that you can no longer live here. Or we ourselves know that we can no longer afford to live in a certain house. What do we start doing? We start looking for other accommodations. We start looking for other homes where we can go ahead and live. Now in the same way, Pasha is asking us, Maharaj is asking us that you know you're here for a limited amount of time. Do you know where you will go once your time here in this body that you're currently in has ended? And if you don't find that nijkar, that tirkar, that sacha mel, then we see that, you know, for example, in the world here, when people who have no house to go to, then what happens? We often call them homeless people. And what happens to them? They suffer. In the same way, Pasha explains to us that if we don't find that sacha mel, the nijkar, the tirkar, then what's going to happen to our mind? It's going to end up going into 84 lakh junna, right? Because those are also homes, whether it's the home of an animal, any different kind of species. If we don't find the true house, the sacha mahal, the nijkar, the tirkar, then what's going to happen? We're going to end up going into those homes. And Pasha explains to us that in this game that God has created, when we are all inside of this body, what happens is we start playing with something called Maya. Just like we were discussing yesterday, Maya are our socha, our vichara, any type of thought that we are thinking. Whether it's a good thought, satoguni socha, once again, like having kindness, compassion, being tolerant, being generous, being empathetic. All those good kind types of thoughts are called satoguni thoughts. In another way, we have the bad thoughts, which are called tamoguni thoughts of kam, krodh, lobh, moh, hankar, jhoot, dvaita, ikha, lust, anger, greed, attachment, pride, hating on others, slandering, gossiping about others. All the negative types of thoughts are called tamoguni thoughts. And the third type of thought are the rajaguni thoughts of hopes, tensions, worries, desires. These three are called Maya. Rajgun, Tamagun, Satagun, Kaiye e teri sab Maya. Now, the goal of Maya is to make sure that our mind doesn't remember God. Why? Because whenever our mind, if he ends up remembering God, he's going to start committing actions, for example, like reading Bani, doing Simran, chanting the Gur Mantra. These are actions that are going to take us closer to God. And if that happens, then the five thieves inside of us, the Maya inside of us, are going to lose this game.